Sometimes, life holds the cruelest irony. When you have to fight just to earn a place within your own family. And even more bitter, when the battle is against a puppet, and you still end up losing. That is the tragic story of Candice Bergen. But what makes people remember her is not her surrender, but her courage. The fearless decision to become herself in a world that insists on controlling everything, even human beings. She didn't fight back with anger. She fought with her career, with her talent, and with a voice strong enough to make the whole world listen. How did a woman once considered not important enough become a figure of respect across America? This is the story of a woman who learned to take control of her own life, after once being controlled like a puppet. Candice Bergen was born on May 9, 1946, in Beverly Hills, California, into a family where fame was an inheritance, but affection was a luxury. Her father, Edgar Bergen, was a legendary ventriloquist, the man who made America laugh every night through the radio. Her mother, Frances Westcott Bergen, was a professional actress and model, a style icon of the 1940s. Together, they were considered Hollywood royalty. Candice once joked, half seriously, "Royalty is the right word for me. I mean, I'm the daughter of a Swedish ventriloquist." But in that glamorous family, there was another child who became world famous long before Candice, the dummy Charlie McCarthy. Edgar created Charlie at the age of 15, paying wood carver Theodore Mack $36 to craft the head, while he made the body himself from a broom handle and rubber bands. From church halls to the national stage, Edgar and Charlie rose to fame through the Chase and Sanborn Hour, 1937 to 1956, becoming a nationwide sensation. In 1938, they received an honorary Oscar, made of wood, a perfect metaphor for the paradox between art and reality. 7 years later, in 1945, Edgar married Frances, 20 years his junior. They moved to Beverly Grove Drive, and a year later, Candice was born. From then on, the house had 3 residents and 1 puppet. As a child, Candice believed Charlie was real, her older brother. He had his own bedroom, larger than hers, complete with a desk, wardrobe, and costumes of Napoleon and Sherlock Holmes. Each morning, little Candice would sit on one of her father's knees while Charlie sat on the other. Edgar would talk to Charlie, move his lips ever so slightly, while his real daughter sat in silence, listening. Director Henry Jaglom once recalled, "For the first 3 years of her life, Candice had breakfast with Edgar and Charlie McCarthy. Charlie would tell her, 'Drink your milk.' Her father never spoke to her directly, until one day she opened a forbidden closet and found 5 wooden brothers hanging inside. From that moment on, Candice Bergen understood that in her father's house, silence was the language of love. He even taught her to be a real dummy, pulling gently on the back of her neck so that her mouth would open whenever he wished. It was both funny and cruel, a lesson that made her realize, far too early, that survival meant learning to control herself before others could. As she grew up, Candice carried a quiet wound, the feeling of having to compete with a block of wood for affection. Her father even questioned her beauty, warning, "Every beautiful woman I've ever known ended up either killing herself or failing. Don't be fooled by appearances. Cultivate everything in spite of them." That sentence, at once harsh and profound, taught Candice that intelligence was a woman's true salvation. It shaped her fierce independence and unwavering sense of self for the rest of her life. Her teenage years painted a different tone, glamorous yet far from peaceful. She attended Liza Minnelli's birthday parties, met Walt Disney, and at just 12, appeared with her father on You Bet Your Life. Later, They would appear together again on What's My Line and the Hollywood Palace. Yet all that glitter only made her feel more confined, forever cast as Edgar Bergen's daughter. At 14, she was sent to boarding school in Switzerland, where she became mischievous and rebellious. When her parents came to visit, she famously offered them a Bloody Mary mixed by Richard Burton, and Candice was only 14. After a childhood controlled by someone else's voice, Candice Bergen knew that to truly exist, she had to create a voice of her own. At the University of Pennsylvania, she was crowned Homecoming Queen and Miss University, the embodiment of elegance and intellect in the 1960s. But in reality, she was a poor student, failing multiple classes and feeling utterly out of place in academia. Candice later admitted, "I couldn't imagine myself living in a world where people talked about formulas and exams. I needed a world with lights and real emotions." In 1965, she dropped out of college, a decision that marked the beginning of her independence. No longer relying on her parents' fame, she stepped into the world on her own terms. Candice began her career as a professional model, quickly appearing in Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and Chanel campaigns. In an era when models were often treated like living dolls, she stood out with her calm intelligence and quiet confidence, eyes that seemed to observe rather than perform. The fashion world hailed her as the new symbol of 1960s elegance, a beauty that was cool, luminous, and emotionally complex. But Candice Bergen didn't want to be just another pretty face. She wanted to act, truly act. In 1966, she made her film debut in The Group, directed by Sidney Lumet, portraying Lakey, a lesbian graduate from Vassar College. The role was controversial and heavily criticized, but Candice didn't hide. Instead, she wrote about her filming experience for Esquire magazine, a sharp, witty, and brutally honest piece that revealed a rare mix of intelligence and self-awareness. Critics began to see her not just as a cinematic beauty, but as a genuine talent. That same year, she appeared in The Sand Pebbles, playing an American missionary teacher who falls in love with a Navy engineer played by Steve McQueen. The film earned multiple Oscar nominations and positioned Candice as one of Hollywood's most promising newcomers. Within just 2 years, she worked alongside major stars like Yves Montand in Vivre pour Vivre, 1967, and took on a demanding role in The Magus, 1968, a film that critics panned, but one that proved she was unafraid to take risks and embrace failure as part of her craft. In the early 1970s, Candice Bergen continued to push boundaries with Carnal Knowledge, 1971, directed by Mike Nichols, playing the lover of Jack Nicholson. The role, sensual yet deeply psychological, was considered her most powerful dramatic performance of that era. That same year, she appeared in T.R. Baskin, portraying a small-town girl who moves to the city, a role that mirrored her own real-life journey. After becoming a familiar face on screen, Candice took an unexpected turn. She became a photographer and photojournalist, inspired by Dorothea Lange and Margaret Bourke-White, and encouraged by Mary Ellen Mark, she began collaborating with Esquire Life and Playboy. Candice photographed and wrote about Charlie Chaplin, Jane Goodall, a Maasai witch doctor in Kenya, and other strange, remarkable stories she personally witnessed. She even worked as a television reporter for AM America and Today, and was invited to join 60 Minutes, but declined, saying she didn't want to be the token decorative woman. The public doubted she wrote her own material, but Candice silenced them with action. In 1984, she published her memoir, Knock Wood, recounting her childhood living with a dummy, her path to independence, and her acting career, all told with her trademark wit and candor. Critics praised it as acidic yet charming, pure Candice Bergen. From The Group to the Wind and the Lion, 1975, opposite Sean Connery, Candice Bergen had survived a decade of reinvention. She was no longer the Bergen daughter, no longer just a model or a pretty actress, but an artist who had found her voice in a world full of labels. Most critics still claimed she was beautiful rather than talented, but Candice knew she stood on the edge of something greater: humor, intellect, and resilience. And from that foundation, just a few years later, she would rewrite American television history with Murphy Brown. After nearly 2 decades of unpredictable roles, Candice Bergen finally found the character that would define her life. In 1979, she stunned Hollywood with her performance in Starting Over, directed by Alan J. Pakula, particularly the hilariously disastrous singing scene that had audiences doubled over with laughter. That moment of self-mockery earned her first Academy Award nomination, marking a turning point from the image of an aloof beauty to that of a sharp, witty, and self-aware actress. By 1988, Candice, now a wife, a young mother, and the spouse of French director Louis Malle, had nearly withdrawn from Hollywood. She was living in France, devoting most of her time to family life and her young daughter, Chloe. But one day, on a flight to New York, she happened to read a script for a new television pilot and instantly knew it was meant for her. The script ended with the main character, a journalist named Murphy Brown, returning to her empty apartment, playing Aretha Franklin's "You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman" and singing along until her voice cracked. "I got to that part and my heart just pounded," Candice recalled. "It was written for me." The character, intelligent, sharp-tongued, stubborn, and just past 40, spoke for millions of women juggling ambition and prejudice. When CBS executives hesitated, does she really have to be 40? Couldn't she be 30? So maybe Heather Locklear could play her? Writer Diane English refused to compromise. The whole point of Murphy is that she's grown, scarred, and still unbroken. Candice later recalled, "Murphy was strong, principled, sometimes outrageous, and I love that. She didn't care what people thought. She spoke the truth. I got to be myself, raw, fearless, and real." The filming of the pilot episode was like an explosion. Candice, who had never done sitcoms before, walked onto the set and had the entire studio audience in constant laughter. When the director finally shouted, "Cut!" she burst into tears. "I knew then. I'd just found the role of my life." From 1988 to 1998, Murphy Brown became a full-blown American cultural phenomenon. Candice received 7 consecutive Emmy nominations, winning 5, and after her 5th win, she voluntarily withdrew from consideration. "I didn't want to monopolize the stage from other women. I just wanted to add my voice." The show didn't just give American women a mirror to see themselves. It also made the nation's political establishment pay attention. When Murphy decided to become a single mother, Vice President Dan Quayle publicly condemned her as a poor role model for women. But instead of backing down, Candice and the creative team incorporated his speech directly into the next episode, transforming his criticism into a feminist statement for the era. Behind the scenes, Candice infused Murphy with her own soul. From an office filled with fake Time and Newsweek covers featuring Murphy interviewing the Pope, played by an actor on the Warner Brothers lot, to the now iconic wardrobe, Donna Karan jackets, Robert Lee Morris bangles, and custom baseball caps revealing her hairline, Candice wanted every outfit to express an attitude. Within months, her signature look spread across America. For 10 years, Candice lived almost entirely in the dim light of the studio, and she never wanted to leave. Playing Murphy Brown was pure joy. I've never been that confident in my life. It was a gift from heaven. Even her husband, director Louis Malle, couldn't resist Murphy's pull. In the show's sixth season, he made a cameo as himself. In one scene, Murphy asks, "Are you firing me?" And Louis replies, "That's right." Then, as he turns away, he laughs softly and adds, "I pity the man who lives with her." The entire set erupted in laughter. In 1992, during the storyline in which Murphy chooses to become a single mother, life suddenly echoed fiction in a way no one expected. When Vice President Dan Quayle publicly attacked the show again, accusing Murphy Brown of being a bad example for American women, for daring to have a child without a husband. The nation was divided. One side claimed television was destroying family values. The other saw Murphy Brown as a beacon for modern women, daring to live life on their own terms. But instead of backing away, the writing team did something unprecedented. They inserted Dan Quayle's actual speech into the following episode. The scene in which Murphy holds her baby, watching herself being attacked on the news, both tragic and darkly comic, left millions of viewers in stunned silence. From that moment, Murphy Brown was no longer just a sitcom. It became the first open conversation between women and society about the right to choose. How to mother, how to live, how to love. Candice Bergen suddenly found herself at the center of a national debate. She was invited to speak at universities, hailed as a symbolic voice of the rising third wave of feminism in America. She only smiled and said simply, "If they think I'm a bad example, then that's exactly the kind of bad example women need." The success of Murphy Brown transcended television. Critics called it a golden milestone of popular feminism, while Time magazine described Candice as the woman who made America listen to the voice of grown women. In 2018, 2 decades later, CBS decided to revive Murphy Brown. At 72, Candice returned to the same role, still sharp, still witty, still unafraid to satirize the politics of her time. Her comeback wasn't about nostalgia. It was a statement that some voices once heard never fade. With Murphy Brown, Candice didn't just win 5 Emmy Awards and 2 Golden Globes. She redefined what a powerful woman means on television. No weapons, no action scenes, just words and integrity. And for millions of viewers, that was stronger than any punch. It was the power of truth and self-respect. While Hollywood was busy chasing younger faces and glossier films, Candice Bergen quietly turned down a different path, one defined by intellect, observation, and silence. At a time when her name was in high demand after The Sand Pebbles and Carnal Knowledge, Candice walked away from movie sets, carrying nothing but a Leica camera and a conviction that the world beyond the spotlight held far more meaningful stories. She was deeply influenced by Dorothea Lange and Margaret Bourke-White, women who used the lens to tell the truth. And through her close friendship with Mary Ellen Mark, Candice discovered her true passion for photojournalism, an art stripped of pretense and performance, built only on light, people, and truth. Throughout the 1970s, Candice Bergen worked as a photographer and freelance writer for leading magazines such as Esquire, Life, Playboy, and New York Magazine. Her camera captured portraits of Charlie Chaplin, Jane Goodall, and even a Maasai witch doctor in Kenya. Figures both legendary and enigmatic. Her photo essays went beyond beautiful images. They were filled with reflection. Candice wrote about the loneliness of fame, about art, and about the moral responsibility of observing others without wounding them. That depth of perception soon drew attention from television. She was invited to join AM America and The Today Show, and even offered a spot on 60 Minutes. But she turned it down, saying, "I didn't want to be someone who just reads scripts. I wanted to tell stories through my own eyes." When she wasn't in front of the camera, Candice Bergen was behind it. When she wasn't speaking through dialogue, she was telling stories through light and silence, and with the sensitivity of someone who had lived under the glare of fame. Candice Bergen learned to step back, to see the world through the calm of her own quiet truth. If photography allowed Candice Bergen to observe the world, writing allowed her to observe herself. After years in front of the camera, where every line was written by someone else, Candice decided to tell her own story in a voice so honest that it made Hollywood uneasy. In 1984, she published her first memoir, Knock Wood. It wasn't a self-congratulatory autobiography, but rather a sharp, self-deprecating confession about her bizarre childhood, fame, and the insecurities of growing up in a house of puppets. Candice wrote about her brilliant yet distant father, the ache of competing with a block of wood for affection, and her lifelong search for identity in a world that judged women by appearances. The book received immediate critical acclaim. The New York Times called it the wittiest and most honest memoir ever written by a movie star. Readers found not the vanity of celebrity, but the intelligence of a woman unafraid to laugh at herself and her pain. 30 years later, at 70, Candice picked up the pen again, this time not to revisit her youth, but to speak about love, loss, and healing. In 2015, she released her second memoir, A Fine Romance, chronicling her marriage to French director Louis Malle, the brief but beautiful happiness they shared, her grief after his death from cancer, and her journey raising their daughter Chloe alone. There was no self-pity, no embellishment. Candice wrote with the calm wisdom of someone who had lived long enough to know that tragedy can also be a gift. I write because I want to talk about what others hide, the sadness, the foolishness, and the love. Candice Bergen. A Fine Romance quickly became a New York Times bestseller, praised for its intelligence, humor, and honesty that made readers laugh through tears. From Knock Wood to A Fine Romance, Candice Bergen proved that she wasn't just someone whose story was told. She was the storyteller of her own life. With honesty, wit, and dignity, she redefined what it means to be a woman once seen as a role model, yet one who always chose to be unapologetically, authentically herself. By the mid-1980s, when her career was steady and the lights of Hollywood no longer thrilled her, Candice Bergen met Louis Malle, the Oscar-winning French director, a quiet, introspective artist, as complex and conflicted as she was. They met at a dinner party where two people from vastly different worlds recognized something rare and familiar in each other. She, a straightforward, pragmatic American actress who loved light and laughter. He, a thoughtful, poetic French filmmaker who saw the world through silence. They married in 1980, dividing their time between New York and Paris, and collaborated on two of Malle's acclaimed films, Pretty Baby and Atlantic City. Their life together was a rhythm of flights, film sets, late-night dinners by candlelight, and love letters scribbled on hotel stationery. In 1985, Candice gave birth to their daughter, Chloe Malle, the one true light, as she once called her, the thing that made the world make sense. For the first time, Candice felt the completeness of a happiness her childhood had never allowed, a real home. But fate, once again, intervened. In 1995, Louis Malle passed away from lymphoma at the age of 63. Candice became a widow at 49, quietly, without spectacle or drama. In her memoir, A Fine Romance, she wrote, "When he died, I lost a part of myself, but love never dies. It only changes shape." Louis's death left an emptiness that could never be filled, yet it also opened a path to healing. Candice chose to keep living, not to forget, but to preserve. She poured her love into raising Chloe, returned to her work, and found strength in the very pain that once broke her. By 2000, she remarried Marshall Rose, a successful New York businessman, a kindred spirit who shared her quiet, grounded way of life. Gone were the premieres and red carpets. In their place came peace, books, music, and family dinners. Now, with Chloe Malle grown, married, and a mother herself, Candice is a joyful grandmother. In a recent interview, she reflected softly, "For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm living in a family that truly knows how to love." Yes, it's true. And it became one of the most defining and haunting moments of her life. After 2 marriages and losing the 2 men she had loved most deeply, Candice Bergen had already known what it felt like to be distanced by the first man who ever should have loved her own father. In 1978, when the legendary comedian Edgar Bergen passed away, Candice, then at the height of her career, thought she was strong enough to handle it. "I was sad, but also relieved," she wrote. Because at last, the lifelong battle for his affection was over. But then came the reading of the will, and everything collapsed. The lawyer read slowly, "I leave $10,000 to Charlie McCarthy, my faithful companion, whom I have never been without for even a single day." Charlie McCarthy, the ventriloquist dummy who had followed Edgar through his entire career, was described as his true companion and was granted $10,000 in inheritance. Candice, his real daughter, was not mentioned once. In her memoir, A Fine Romance, Candice wrote, "I had spent my whole life seeking my father's approval, and this was proof that I would never have it. I was hurt and stunned to learn that he had left me out of his will. As for the money left to Charlie, she later explained that the $10,000 was meant to be reinvested in ventriloquism performances, a way for my father to keep his friend alive on stage. In the will, Edgar explicitly wrote, I make this provision for sentimental reasons. Because of my association with Charlie McCarthy, who became a real person to me, someone I never parted with for even a single day." Years later, in an interview with the New York Times, Candice admitted, "It was probably the strangest case of sibling rivalry in the history of psychology. I knew Charlie was made of wood, but he had his own radio show, and I didn't. When I appeared on the program, the script always made Charlie jealous of me. And I knew that, even in fiction, I was still second place." After her father's death, Candice kept a few of Charlie's relics, but the dummy itself was donated to the Smithsonian Institution. "I'm not that morbid," she laughed. Perhaps because, by then, she had finally let go. In a 1984 interview, Candice Bergen reflected, "My father's death left a void, but it was also a release. I could finally live up to my own expectations. I had always felt my fame was borrowed from him, and at last, I reclaimed it." Still, she never denied the love her father had for her, in his own quiet way. "He was emotionally reclusive, but I know he loved me. It's just, he couldn't say it." And in her later years, as a mother, a wife, and now a grandmother, Candice says everything from the past has long been resolved. "Today, the most important thing to me is to say, I love you to my family, something my father never could. Maybe I lived to finish what he couldn't." Perhaps deep down, Charlie McCarthy was nothing more than the shadow of loneliness Edgar could never express in words. And Candice Bergen, the daughter once written out of the will, became the one who ultimately carried on his true legacy, his wit, his intelligence, and his humanity. And what about you? If the person you loved most left you nothing, not a penny, and instead gave it all to someone else, even to something lifeless, would you resent them, or would you find a way to forgive? And one more thing you might not expect. Candice Bergen once lived a life far wilder than her calm grace suggests. She dabbled in drugs, 1960s counterculture, and politics, mingling with figures like Huey Newton and Abby Hoffman, and campaigning for George McGovern. She experienced Rolfing therapy, joined group sessions, was arrested during an anti-war protest, and moved in circles that ranged from radicals to royals, among movie stars and politicians alike. If there's one thing that defines Candice Bergen, it isn't fame or tragedy. It's her ability to regain balance after every fall. From a childhood overshadowed by a puppet, to a marriage marked by loss, from the heartbreak of being written out of her father's will, to the years she drifted through politics and psychedelics, Candice always found a way to rise again, quietly and gracefully. She never ran from pain. She learned to live with it, and then turned it into the raw material of a free life. For Candice, writing became her form of balance. Knock Wood, 1984, was her way of reconciling with the past, an intimate reflection on growing up beside a wooden brother. A Fine Romance, 2015, was gentler, a love letter to loss, resilience, and renewal. Her memoirs weren't bitter. They were luminous, laced with humor, perspective, and hard-earned wisdom. "If I can make one woman believe she can stand on her own," Candice said, "then that's the most important role I'll ever play." Candice returned to acting not for fame, but for the joy of simply living. In Boston Legal, 2005 to 2008, she embodied Shirley Schmidt, powerful, witty, and self-assured, almost a reflection of her real self. In Book Club, 2018, alongside Diane Keaton, Jane Fonda, and Mary Steenburgen, she portrayed women who, even in later life, still knew how to love, laugh, and live freely. That same year, Murphy Brown was revived, and at 72, Candice once again became a symbol of feminism and endurance. Once dismissed as a Hollywood pretty face, she had become the embodiment of strength, intellect, and authenticity for a generation that grew up alongside her. After surviving 2 strokes, a broken pelvis, and several surgeries, Candice decided to slow down. "I'm tired of having to look good," she laughed. "I'm fat and I'm happy. I live to eat, not eat to live." It wasn't just a joke. It was a declaration of peace. From a young model once obsessed with her image, she had become a woman brave enough to love even her imperfections. On The Ellen Show, she proudly introduced her Walker Boutique, a walker decorated with flowers, pearls, and a horn. The audience roared with laughter, and Candice smiled. Getting old isn't scary. What's scary is forgetting to laugh. That's Candice Bergen, still witty, still radiant, still balanced through every storm. And what about you? Are you merely surviving life, or learning to find balance within the things you cannot change? Candice Bergen never needed to prove that she was good enough. After all the years of being compared, judged, and misunderstood, she has finally found peace within herself. No more hurt, no more envy, no more race to win. Only the quiet grace of a woman who has lived deeply, loved fully, lost painfully, and learned that happiness isn't the absence of sorrow, but the ability to smile when it passes. Candice leaves behind a rare kind of legacy, not only in art, but in the way she existed as a cultural symbol. She is one of the most influential television actresses of the 20th century, the woman who made America rethink the image of the modern woman through Murphy Brown. Intelligent, independent, sometimes defiant, but always human and full of compassion. Through that role, Candice shattered the boundaries of her time, becoming a bridge between classic Hollywood and modern television, between old prejudice, and the rising voice of feminism. Fame doesn't come from lineage or beauty. It comes from how you face life. That line stands as Candice Bergen's life manifesto, a woman who turned darkness into light, silence into a voice for a generation of women once dismissed. Today, Candice Bergen is no longer the forgotten child or someone else's shadow. She is living proof that from brokenness one can still build a beautiful life, not perfect, but profoundly real. If you've ever grown up in someone else's shadow, remember Candice Bergen's story, the woman who found freedom through pain. Because age, gender, or the past will never define your worth. Only the way you live and love will. Share this video if you believe everyone deserves to be loved and to live as their true selves. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to join us on the journey of discovering the real, beautiful, and inspiring stories of those who turned pain into strength.